Imagine this: you've got a killer idea for a podcast, but you're staring at your laptop, wondering what the first step is. Do you need to invest in expensive gear? How do you get your podcast on platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcasts? And once it's out there, how do you get people to actually listen? You're in the right place. Today we're diving deep into how you can go from $0 to $10,000 a month by starting a profitable podcast. Sounds exciting, right? But I bet you have a ton of questions buzzing around in your mind. Like, where do you even start? What equipment do you need? How do you grow your audience? And most importantly, how do you monetize it? In this video, we're going to answer all these questions and walk you through each step, from brainstorming your podcast idea to seeing that sweet $10,000 rolling into your bank account each month. We'll talk about the best equipment that won't break the bank, how to create engaging content that keeps listeners coming back, and the secrets to growing your audience quickly. Plus, we'll dive into different monetization strategies like sponsorships, affiliate marketing, and listener support, so you can choose the best fit for you. Stick around, because I'll also share some insider tips and tricks that you won't find anywhere else. By the end of this video, you'll have a clear roadmap for starting your own podcast and making it profitable. So if you're ready to turn your passion into a paycheck, let's get started. But before we start, make sure you've subscribed to our channel. Alright, first things first, finding your niche. Now I know what you're thinking: niche? Isn't that a fancy word for something really specific? And you're right, but it's more than that. Your niche is your sweet spot, where your passion meets audience demand. Let's break it down. Think about what you love talking about. Is it a true crime? Gardening? Business strategies? That's your starting point. But here's the kicker: you also need to make sure there's an audience out there who shares your enthusiasm. According to a recent study, the top podcast niches include comedy, news, and true crime. But don't just follow the crowd. Find your unique angle. For example, instead of a generic fitness podcast, how about focusing on fitness for busy moms? Or eco-friendly fitness? Let's take the example of the Minimalist podcast. Joshua Fields, Milburn, and Ryan Nicodemus didn't just talk about decluttering, they built a whole movement around minimalist living. They found their niche and stuck to it, and now they have millions of downloads and a thriving business. So grab a piece of paper and jot down your passions. Then, do a little research. Check out podcast directories, see what's trending, and find your perfect niche. Trust me, this step is crucial for your podcast's success. Now that you've nailed your niche, let's talk about gear. You don't need a fancy studio to start. Seriously, some of the best podcasts started with just a laptop and a cheap microphone. Here's what you need: a decent microphone. The Audio-Technica AITR 2100X is fantastic and won't break the bank. Headphones. Any comfortable pair will do, but something like the Sony MDR 7506 is a solid choice. Recording software. Audacity is free and works like a charm. A quiet space. Your closet might become your new best friend. Trust me, I've seen podcasters record in their cars, closets, and even under blankets. The key is to minimize background noise. A good microphone makes a huge difference. Imagine listening to a podcast where it sounds like the host is underwater. Not fun, right? Good sound quality keeps your listeners engaged. And if you're really on a budget, start with what you have and upgrade as you go. Your content is what will truly keep people coming back. Alright, gear set up? Now, let's talk about content. This is where the magic happens. Planning your episodes is like crafting a good story. You need a beginning, middle, and end that keep your listeners hooked. Start with a killer intro. Grab your listeners' attention right away. Maybe a surprising fact, a compelling question, or a funny anecdote. Next, keep your content organized. Break it down into segments. For example, if you're running a true crime podcast, you might have a segment for the case background, one for theories, and another for listener questions. And don't forget to end with a bang. Leave your listeners with something to think about or a cliffhanger for the next episode. Consistency is key here. Whether you're uploading weekly or bi-weekly, stick to your schedule. A great example is the How I Built This Podcast by Guy Raz. Each episode is a masterclass in storytelling. Guy interviews entrepreneurs about their journey, but it's the structure that makes it so captivating. Every episode feels like a mini-movie. So outline your episodes, practice your delivery, and keep refining. Your content is what will build a loyal audience. Now, let's get those listeners. Growing your audience is a mix of art and science. First, let's talk about promotion. You've got this amazing podcast, now you need to shout it from the rooftops. Start with social media. Create profiles for your podcast on all major platforms. Share behind-the-scenes content and episode teasers, and engage with your audience. Join podcast directories like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. The more places people can find you, the better. Collaborate with other podcasters. Guest appearances are a fantastic way to reach new listeners. For example, if you're running a finance podcast, team up with a business podcast for a crossover episode. Engage with your audience. Encourage them to leave reviews, ask questions, and share their thoughts. Create a community around your podcast. Okay, here's the part you've been waiting for: making money. There are several ways to monetize your podcast, and you don't need millions of listeners to start earning. Let's start with sponsorships. Once you have a decent audience, reach out to brands that align with your niche. Don't worry if you're just starting, even smaller podcasts can attract sponsors. Just make sure the products or services you promote are relevant to your listeners. Affiliate marketing is another great option. partner with companies and earn a commission for every sale made through your unique link. For instance, if you're hosting a tech podcast, you could promote software or gadgets. Merchandise is fun and effective. Create branded t-shirts, mugs, or stickers. Your loyal fans will love showing off their support. And then there's crowdfunding. Platforms like Patreon allow your listeners to support you directly. Offer exclusive content, early access to episodes, or behind-the-scenes looks as rewards for your supporters. A great example is the last podcast on the left. They've built a community of dedicated listeners who support them on Patreon, and it's a significant revenue stream for them. So explore these options and find what works best for you. Diversifying your income streams can help you reach that $10K month goal faster. Now for the juicy part, insider tips that can make all the difference. First, let's talk about common mistakes. One big mistake is neglecting your show's format. Stick to a structure that works, and keep your audience in mind. Another tip: batch record your episodes. It saves time and keeps you ahead of schedule. Trust me, there's nothing worse than scrambling to record the night before your upload day. Leveraging analytics is crucial. Keep an eye on your listener data. Which episodes are performing well? What's your audience's demographic? Use this information to tailor your content and improve. Let's look at my favorite murder. Karen Kilgariff and Georgia Hardstark noticed that their mini episodes where they read listener stories were a huge hit. They leaned into it, and those episodes are now a staple of their show. And finally, engage with your listeners. Ask for feedback, take their suggestions seriously, and build a relationship with them. Your audience is your biggest asset. Avoid burnout by taking care of yourself. Podcasting should be fun, not a chore. If you need a break, take it. Your listeners will understand. And now we've covered a lot today. From finding your niche to monetizing your podcast, I hope you're feeling inspired and ready to start your journey. Remember, it's all about passion, persistence, and connecting with your audience. Let's take a moment to recap everything we've talked about. This is the fun part, where we get to see the big picture coming together. So first up, find your unique niche. This is where you blend what you love with what people want to hear. Remember our chat about passions and audience demand? It's like finding the perfect pizza topping combo. It has to be just right. Whether it's eco-friendly fitness, true crime stories, or minimalist living, your niche is your podcast's identity. Think of it as the flavor that keeps listeners coming back for more. Just like the minimalists created a whole movement around living with less, you need to find that sweet spot that resonates with you and your audience. Next, we talked about getting the right gear without breaking the bank. This part can seem daunting, but it doesn't have to be. You don't need a Hollywood studio setup. Remember my little demo with the Audio-Technica ATR 2100X mic in my cozy closet recording space. Good sound quality is crucial, but you can achieve that on a budget. And hey, if you're recording under a blanket, that's just part of the journey. It's all about minimizing background noise and making sure your voice shines through. Picture it like this: your microphone is your magic wand, and you're casting spells of wisdom and entertainment, moving on to creating engaging content. This is where the real magic happens. It's like baking a cake. You need the right ingredients in the right proportions. Start with a killer intro that hooks your listeners right away. Maybe share a surprising fact, a compelling question, or a funny anecdote. Then, keep your content organized with clear segments and a structured format. Consistency is your best friend here. Stick to your schedule, whether it's weekly or bi-weekly. Just like Guy Raz does with How I Built This, turn every episode into a captivating story that leaves your audience wanting more. Now, let's talk about promoting your podcast and growing your audience. This is where you become your podcast's biggest cheerleader. Use social media to share behind-the-scenes content, episode teasers, and engage with your audience. And then there's crowdfunding. Platforms like Patreon allow your listeners to support you directly. Offer exclusive content, early access to episodes, or behind-the-scenes looks as rewards. It's all about diversifying your income streams, just like the last podcast on the left did with their successful Patreon page. So, there you have it, a comprehensive roadmap to starting and growing a profitable podcast. Now it's your turn. Start planning, start recording, and start sharing your voice with the world. If you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up, subscribe for more content, and leave a comment with your podcasting questions. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching.